What is up, YouTube? And today we're going to be talking about who you guys want to prioritize with your lattices for your skill prowess and enhancements. Now we're just going to be talking about, SSRs and SRs together, which characters you want to upgrade over the others, what skills you want to prioritize, and also what you want to think about when you're choosing your characters to upgrade. Now, as you guys know, lattices are very rare in this game, so you definitely want to be pretty sparingly using them in your skill upgrades, especially the golden ones. For your SRs, the purple ones aren't that big of a deal to spend because you do get a lot more of these by progressing your account and just doing weeklies, but golden lattice are a lot more rare and are harder to come by and are locked behind a lot of first time clears in Hyperlink Charter and Anasync Echoes and stuff like that. So because of that, you do want to make sure you don't use these too freely. So we're just going to be talking about what characters you want to use them on. So usually for DPS, you're going to want to max them out usually just because you do get a ton of stats from these nodes, and DPS are way more lattice hungry because in this game right now there's like a lot of damage checks, and if you just don't meet those damage checks, you will not be able to actually clear the stage. So Messiah is a very good user of lattice. You'll see that a lot of people tend to max him out. The only thing is, usually with the S1, you don't have to max out all the way on a lot of DPS characters. You can just get it to +4. Mostly you're doing this for that 10% attack damage node. So you want to make sure for DPS, you are using way more on them than supports are. Another very good example of this is Dieting. Dieting really wants everything maxed out because he really wants to do a lot of burst on his S3. So you're maxing his S3 for damage, you're maxing his S2 for the effect on it because passives usually give you a lot, and you also get 20% crit damage, which is huge, and you're maxing his S1 because you are auto attacking a lot and you do get this 10% node. You don't have to max out the S1, you can get it to +4 similar to Messiah, but definitely a good candidate to also invest in. There's some other characters that you don't have to invest fully into, but primarily, the DPSs are gonna require a lot of lattices. Rosa eventually wants everything maxed, but you can get away with S2 and S3. Yeli wants everything maxed, but you can get away with S2 and S3. Giada, if you have her, is the same thing. Eventually wants everything maxed, but I think Giada exclusively only really needs S2 and S3, and you don't have to touch your S1 at all. So that's it for DPSs. DPSs are very hungry. You're going to see that they really need a lot of lattices. What about supports? And by supports, I mean supports and also hybrid DPS. So Gray and Marvel will also fit this category, and even Heinrich. So with these characters, you don't really have to worry about latticing them too much. The only things you really want to go for are going to be things such as cooldown reduction, especially, and also very powerful skills that give you an extra % chance to do it. So a good example of this would be Lily. Lily's S1 is the most important thing in the game to max if you have her and use her a lot, because you want this 100% chance to assist. Very important. You make your damage dealer do a ton more damage when this lands, so just max it out so it's consistent. Very good option there. After that, you want to look for cooldown reduction. So some people go for the cooldown reduction on her S2. I don't think it's really worth it, but a lot of supports do want cooldown reduction, and you can invest into Lily's, but I think there's more better options that you can go for. For example, Kazuya the Reverie, a very good option as well because she gets cooldown reduction on her S3. So maxing her S3 is a very good option here. Now, if you look at her other skills here, she doesn't really get cooldown reduction from anything else. She gets like some turn meter push, so her S2 is not even really worth it. And then her S1, she gets increased chance to slumber, which is okay. But if you think about it, she's going to be S3 most of her turns because it's a 3-turn cooldown. So for supports, you're mostly going to go for cooldown reduction. Something like a Valerian really wants her S3 max because you want that Hazy Dream to start at the start of battle. So something like this with a very powerful effect, you definitely want to go for. Another example could be like Freya here. So Freya, people think that you need to lattice her, but if you look at her S3, which is her most powerful spell, you do not get any cooldown reduction on it, so it's not really required to max out. So Freya is an example where if you actually look at her skills, you'll see that she doesn't really get cooldown reduction outside of her S2, which is a purely defensive skill, so it doesn't really matter as much. And like I said, you have a lot of damage checks you need to meet, so you can actually leave her at 1-1. Klaus is another example, right? Klaus has cooldown reduction on her S3. Definitely good to go for if you're struggling with Doki Doki because she has higher uptime on her, debuffs. Usually with S2, it's okay to go for as well because you get increased turn meter steal, but definitely not really worth it outside of PvP. Now for supports as well, like I mentioned, you get speed from these S1 nodes. You don't really have to go for them at all until you start dipping into PvP. In PvP, that's what really matters, we need to outspeed. But for the most part, for supports, you are just looking for cooldown reduction, right? Healers don't need it as much because healing, you're going to be sitting on your cooldowns for a long time. For example, Linglo sits on her S3 for a while. You're kind of timing it in a lot of fights. So it's not really required, and a lot of times they're overhealing by a lot. So if you're not running them on Fortissimo, it's like all wasted, and usually you're not anyways because you're going to cycle quicker for cooldown reduction. So because of that, you're not really going to need her to actually have any lattices invested because she's going to be sitting on her cooldowns for quite a long time. So yeah, mostly, just to summarize, DPS, you want to go for just pretty much everything, to be honest. S2 and S3 are usually the best, and S1 is going to be very good as well. But it really depends on the character. And for support, just look for cooldown reduction skills. Now, that is how you want to be upgrading your characters. And alongside that, I want to say you do want to prioritize your DPS first because there's a lot of damage checks, like I mentioned. But alongside that, you really want to make sure you think about what characters you want to upgrade. So what I mean by that is there's like 2 areas of content you really need to focus on. That's going to be threshold farming and also Grim Pursuit. Now, to be honest, I think Doki Doki Threshold, these characters are going to be way more important to max out first and skill enhance because it's the area of content that gives you speed gear. Swift Rush gear, if you get good speed on your characters, you'll be able to eventually outspeed most of the PvE content and just clear it that way. This is very, very noticeable in things such as Ember Trek and Anasync Echoes, the super hard areas of content right now. So that's why Doki Doki is super good. Also, speed is the name of the game in PvP. So I think first and foremost, what you're going to want to do is actually invest into your Doki Doki team. So if you guys don't know what your Doki Doki team is, look at what characters you have, look at what people are using, look at the team comps, and try to like copy them, maybe swap in one for another. For example, in this guy's comp, Frosty, you can swap out Lily for something like a Chiaki the Echo, and it works very well. And you want to start, investing into that team. So what you can do for this is you can start, maxing out your S2 and your S3 and your Giada, which he has. Then after that, you can max your S3 on your Kazuya the Reverie. And after that, you can also max your S3 on your Valerian, which is very important. And also max the S1 on your Lily. And boom, there you have it. Your entire Doki Doki team has all they need. So yeah, definitely look at what characters you plan to use in the future. Don't just blindly enhance characters that you pull. You really want to think about your future Doki Doki team, and also to some extent, if you have some left over, your Terramaton team, because after the nerfs, it's a lot easier to clear. And Terramaton will drop you Keen Eye set and also Fury Edge, which will be the 2 best sets for DPS. The last 8 set is coming from Aurora, which is going to be the last of your priorities, in my opinion, because it is the hardest to get into, and Doki Doki and Terramaton are just a lot more important for clearing content because it gives you speed and a lot of damage. Now, alongside that, there's also Grim Pursuit for shells. The first area of content you're going to clear in shells is Nico Nana, which is going to be the easiest by far. It also drops you White Fang, which is a super good DPS shell, Artisan, a very good support shell, Gigabyte, a very good support shell, and Alicorn, also extremely important in some bosses for Anasync Echoes. So this is a really good area of content to farm. Eventually, you'll want to get into Shadowflay Hyoyan and also Rangokutsu because they drop really good shells. Sharon is not that great, so you shouldn't really worry about Sharon teams too much. But for the first shell team, you definitely want to think about your Nico Nana team. Now, if you look at recent teams, you're going to see that there's a lot of free-to-play teams that even popped up. For example, you can use something like a Fangus, you can use something like Kachi. There's a full SR and R team that I have on my channel that's full auto if you guys want to check that out for Nico Nana. So if you really want to save your Golden Lattice for Nico Nana and save it for like a different shell or a different threshold or whatever PvP unit you're building, definitely check out my channel. I have I'll put the link down below, but you guys can check out the free to play team that I have. But yeah, anyways, you want to start farming Nico Nana ASAP for the good shell, so think about investing into those characters. Another note is don't invest characters that are too niche. For example, I could say something like Romoka. So I invested into my Romoka, and I actually regret it because she is extremely good for Doki Doki, but not used anywhere else. And at that time, I also had Messiah, who can be used in Doki Doki. So it would have been just way better for me not to invest into her and just invest fully into Messiah and just have 4 more lattice, and that way I can use it on other characters. So you want to make sure you are investing into characters that can be used in a variety of content, unless you are pretty restricted on options. If you only have Romoka for your Doki Doki team, then yes, it's a very good choice. But for content where you're using a lot of characters using a lot of content in, that's what you want to prioritize. This is also a reason why I have Kloss maxed on S3. A lot of people leave her at 111, but she is very good on level 5 on her S3 because it gives her extra CDR, and I use her everywhere, so it's very important. Another thing that you can mention is something like a Rosa. So Rosa is a very good single target DPS. You only need her S2 and S3 maxed out, like I mentioned, with S1 being very good to have. But if you plan to use her in a lot of content as your single target damage dealer because you don't have like a Diting, then of course, max her out. So yeah, Definitely want to make sure you are sparingly using your lattice, but also be smart with it. Don't hoard them because it gates a lot of your character strength. And think a lot about what areas of content you are progressing into and what teams you want to build to tackle those areas of content. Definitely you want to think about your teams beforehand. You can always check what people are running in these recent clears. This is what I reference a lot. Whenever I get stuck on building teams in the past, I would always reference this because these guys clearly have been playing beta for super long and speedrun it. So this is like a great reference. It updates every day as well, which is great. I would kind of stay away from the clear times though, because for example, some people invested into Yang and Mio for Doki Doki Inferno just solely for it, but they kind of realized it doesn't really work unless you're one-shotting. So you want to make sure that you go to recent clears here and then just look at times that are not super long, but like average, like 3 minutes, 4 minutes is fine. But yeah, hopefully you guys found this video helpful in deciding who to lattice and skill up. There isn't really a right and wrong answer because eventually you'll be able to skill up most of your characters, but please make sure that you use it very smartly and think about the content that you are planning to tackle as soon as you hit the Inferno difficulty, because Hell can be done by a lot of characters, but Inferno can only be done by a select few. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next video.